Let's talk about your eye and how your eyes work. Now this is an external view of the eye, and you can recognize some parts that you probably knew about already. The big black dot in the middle, which is actually really a hole that lets light into the eye, that's the pupil. And surrounding the pupil, of course, you have a band of muscle called the iris. And the iris controls the size of the pupil, can make it big or small depending on light conditions, depending on whether it's dark out or light out. On top of that, we can see the white of the eye. Now the white of the eye actually has a name. It's called the sclera. The sclera is a tough membrane that surrounds the eye, so even around the back where you can't see, you have sclera. And it's protective. Its job is to protect the eyeball. And obviously you notice that the white of the eye does not extend around the front of the eye, because if it did, you wouldn't be able to see anything, right? But actually, the sclera does extend in front of the eye. It's just that the part in front of the eye is transparent. And that transparent part of the sclera is called the cornea. So let's take a look at the inside of your eye. All right, your eyeball basically consists of 3 layers surrounding a big ball of jelly. And that's basically it. So in the middle here we have the big ball of jelly, and that's called the vitreous humor. And the vitreous humor's job basically is to maintain the shape of the eyeball. Because it's not a fluid, it's got some jelly-like properties. It keeps the eyeball from being too squishy. It maintains a round shape. Now the 3 layers of the eyeball are the cornea, retina, and the sclera. Now we already know about the sclera. That's the outer protective layer. The inner layer is the retina. And the retina is important because it contains the photoreceptive cells, the rods and the cones. These are the cells that actually are stimulated by light. The choroid is the middle layer of the eyeball. In its jaw, it contains the blood vessels. So the blood vessels come in here and they can nourish the cells of the eye. Now, if we take a look at the retina is important because that's the inner layer of the eyeball where the photoreceptive cells are, the rods and the cones. There's 2 other points to make here. Number 1, the part of the eyeball, the part of the retina, which is right in the middle of your field of view, is called the fovea. And the fovea is where you have the greatest concentration of photoreceptive cells. Now that makes sense if you think about it. When you want to look at something close up, you look at it straight on. When you look at it straight on, not to the side, when you look at it straight on, all of that light is going to the fovea, where you have the greatest concentration of these cells. Okay, notice we also have the optic nerve coming into the eyeball. The optic nerve is responsible for taking the nerve signals from those photoreceptors to the brain. Now the interesting thing here is that the point where the optic nerve attaches to the eyeball, there are no photoreceptors. So theoretically, if a small beam of light were to travel into the eye and land right there on the optic nerve, you would not see it because there's no cells to pick it up. Therefore, the point where the optic nerve joins the eyeball is called the blind spot. Now interesting, I mean obviously when you look out in your field of view, you don't see 2 blind spots, one on the left, one on the right. And that's because you have the 2 eyes working together and they're able to fill in the missing information from the blind spot for the other eye. So here's basically how your eyes work. Light enters the eye through the pupil, and then it encounters this thing called the lens. The lens's job is to focus the light. Now we want the light focused right on the retina, on the inner layer of the eye, because that's where the photoreceptors are, the rods and cones. Now to do that, the lens has to be able to change shape. So to really focus light, to look at things up close, it's got to get nice and fat. And when you're looking at things from a distance where you don't have to focus them as much, it gets nice and thin. The muscles that accomplish that are located here and here. Basically, it's a ring of muscle that surrounds the lens. That's called the ciliary body, or the ciliary muscle. And again, the job of that muscle is to change the shape of the lens so that it can focus the light onto the fovea. So here's another picture of the eyeball, just showing that the eyeball has 3 layers. You've got the sclera, the choroid, and the retina. Okay, so light coming into the eye, we want it focused right on the retina. Okay, so this is how it should be. Light is focused directly on the retina. However, sometimes things don't work exactly the way it should, and we have 2 situations here. Here we have a situation where the light is actually focused at a point in front of the retina. Now this is called short-sightedness, or myopia. And again, that's because the light is focused on a point in front of the retina. And the result of that is you can see that we're stimulating 2 points on the retina, not 1, so the images might appear blurry. This can occur for 2 reasons, basically. Number 1, it's possible that your lens of your eye is a little bit too strong. and therefore it's bending the light rays or focusing them just a little bit too much, so it's landing, focusing in front of the retina. The other possibility is that your eyeball is just, for whatever reason, a little bit too long. Okay, now that was nearsightedness. Here's farsightedness. And in farsightedness, we have the image being projected to a point behind the retina. And you can see the same thing. I'm going to have 2 points in the retina stimulated instead of 1, so it might appear blurry. So this is called farsightedness or hyperopia, same thing. And it can be caused by, 2 things as well. Either your eyeball is too short, and so the image is projected behind it, or perhaps the lens of your eye is not strong enough. It's not focusing the light rays enough. Okay, so if we take a look at the eyeball, we see where the distribution of rods and cones are. So right here, I know it shows the optic nerve, but it kind of comes in at the side. But right here is the fovea, the part in the middle of your retina. And that is where you have the greatest concentration of cones. Cones are the photoreceptive cells that respond to color. Rods are photoreceptive cells that respond to black and white light. Okay, so during the night, you'll notice you don't see colors very well at nighttime when it's dark out. And that's because it's mostly the rods that are being stimulated by that light. Okay, rods work a lot better under low light conditions. Cones work better under higher light conditions. Notice that the cones are mostly concentrated around the middle of your eyeball, the fovea, whereas rods are kind of located, more in the periphery of the eyeball.